Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Friday, May 9th, 2025. Today is day 581. The conclave of the Roman Catholic Church cardinals yesterday voted to elect Cardinal Robert Prevost, known as Pope Leo XIV, to lead the Catholic Church. Leo XIV was born in Chicago, and he is the first North American pontiff and the first pope to hail from the United States. President Trump described Leo's election as a great honor, and we're praying alongside of Pope Leo XIV and are eager to see how he will continue to follow in the footsteps of his predecessor, advocating for peace in the Middle East. There were statements in response, not only from President Trump, who said, "What an excitement. It's a great honor for our country. I look forward to meeting Pope Leo XIV. It will be a very meaningful moment." But Israeli President Herzog said, "We look forward to enhancing the relationship between Israel and the Holy See and strengthening the friendship between Jews, Christians in the Holy Land and around the world." Quite absent that he did not speak about Muslims. He also said, "May your papacy be one of building bridges and understanding between faiths. May we see the immediate and safe return of all hostages still held in Gaza and a new era of peace in our region and around the world." Hamas's response also congratulated the Pope on his election. And they said they look forward to his continuation of the late Pope's path in supporting the oppressed and rejecting the genocide in Gaza, wishing him success in fulfilling his spiritual and humanitarian mission amid the tragedies and disasters afflicting the world today, foremost among them the brutal Zionist aggression against our Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. In Gaza, most of the 170 community kitchens shut their doors yesterday. This was hours after the World Central Kitchen charity announced it had run out of supplies and wasn't able to provide meals. The development closes off a lifeline that's been used by hundreds of thousands of people to stave off growing hunger in Gaza. Armed Israeli security forces yesterday forced the closure of 3 schools that were run by UNRWA, the UN Refugee Agency for Palestinians, in occupied East Jerusalem. The UNRWA Commissioner General Lazzarini made this announcement. Israel accuses UNRWA of being infiltrated by Hamas. UNRWA denies those claims. The U.S. announced an aid distribution plan for Gaza that was rejected by the United Nations, in part because it would only feed 60% of Gaza. Under the U.S. plan, a new agency called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is being set up. It would have distribution sites that would be secured by private U.S. military contractors, and they would be manned by aid workers. The Israeli military would be involved in providing necessary military security outside of the immediate area of the distribution sites. U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Huckabee, said that today. And it's being stated that the former executive director of the World Food Program and the Nobel Prize laureate, David Beasley, is in talk with the Trump administration and the Israeli government and other key players to be the new head of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. That was reported just yesterday. In the U.S., President Trump said that there would be an announcement regarding Gaza within 24 hours. That was 2 days ago. Yesterday, a State Department person said we're just steps away from an announcement on the issue coming shortly. The UN and international aid agencies have expressed skepticism about this U.S. plan for reestablishing aid deliveries. Almost all the news says that it's a U.S.-Israeli plan, but I read a speech from Ambassador Huckabee that said it is not an Israeli plan, it is a U.S. plan. President Trump said that he met with the strategic advisor or strategic affairs minister of Israel, Ron Dermer, who is a confidant of Netanyahu, in a private meeting focused on the war in Gaza and U.S. nuclear talks with Iran. And Israel plans to evacuate Palestinians from Gaza. That plan would amount to illegal forced displacement, and it would undermine efforts to create a Palestinian state. It would lead to more violence. That was said by the foreign ministers of Norway and Iceland. Columbia University suspended 65 students and barred 33 people from campus after pro-Palestine demonstrators took over the campus library a few days ago. where masked pro-Palestinian demonstrators took over the reading room. From a report I read, it sounds like these are suspensions and not that the students were expelled. The protests led to 81 arrests. Acting President Shipman condemned the violence in a video statement and promised that there would be disciplinary actions that would reflect the severity of the incident. So we're still waiting for that announcement from President Trump. He's been hinting at good news coming from the Middle East. He has scattered insights about what could be happening with an Iran nuclear deal and referred to an anticipated development in the Gaza Strip. Haaretz in Israel, their military analyst said there are a host of interconnected matters with President Trump's pending trip to the Middle East. The first has to do with Houthis in Yemen. On Tuesday, of course, the U.S. and Trump announced that there's a peace agreement between the Americans and the Houthis. And the Houthis will stop bombing U.S. ships and U.S. interests, and the U.S.-British military campaign against them in recent months would also be brought to an end. But the solution left out Israel, where a ballistic missile launched from Yemen landed at Ben Gurion Airport Sunday a week ago. The Israeli Air Force attacked in response in Yemen. And so there's concern about what this means in terms of the U.S.-Israeli relationship. Next week, President Trump will be in the Middle East, traveling to 3 countries. This will be his first overseas trip. He's traveling to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. He's expected to sign deals that are worth trillions of dollars. In addition to whether or not the U.S. will enter into a deal with Saudi Arabia, there's a whole conversation about that happening without Israel. In addition, another point of intersection is the agreement with Iran and the situation in the Gaza Strip. And just to remind you, Saudi Arabia and Iran have not had good relations in past months and past years. And there was an unprecedented move where they are talking and negotiating. Previously, Saudi Arabia supported others like the U.S. and Israel in their attacks of Iran. Now, Iran and Saudi Arabia are striving for an agreement with Tehran in the hope that it will bring long-term peace to the region. I also heard an update on Aiden Alexander, who's believed to be the only U.S. hostage that is still alive. It's still unconfirmed, but on April 20th, his father talked to the press, asserting the hope that his son was alive and that the U.S. would re-engage in direct talks. You'll recall the U.S. and Hamas did have an agreement, but it had certain requirements and expectations of Israel that Israel was not willing to meet. And Alexander's release could be a part of a deal to be able to resume aid to Gaza, and it might intersect with some of these other moving pieces. Finally, I mentioned that speech by U.S. Ambassador Huckabee, who said that the U.S. plan to distribute food is to be efficient and safe, and one of their main goals is preventing the Hamas terrorist group from getting its hands on it and stealing it. Huckabee said Hamas is 100% responsible for the horrific situation in Gaza, and their leaders are starving their people. He urged unanimous international condemnation of Hamas torturing hostages in tunnels. In the West Bank, it's honestly been really hard to find reports about what's going on there, even though I know settler extremism continues to be rampant. I did see that Israeli forces arrested 55 wanted individuals, confiscated weapons. This was in a West Bank counterterrorism operation this week. Additionally, statements indicate that one, quote, terrorist was killed during the operations. 3 of the apprehended individuals threw stones and Molotov cocktails near the settlement of Efrat and lightly wounded an Israeli citizen 2 weeks ago, according to the statement. In Yemen, the U.S. operation against Houthi rebels has cost more than $1 billion since March, according to 2 U.S. officials who were briefing on the strikes. And this afternoon in Israel, rockets, sirens sounded all over central Israel and Tel Aviv after a missile was again launched from Yemen. In terms of Saudi Arabia, the U.S. is no longer demanding Saudi Arabia normalize its ties with Israel as a condition for U.S.-Saudi talks related to civil nuclear cooperation. Dropping the demand is a major concession by Washington, and some news outlets have been reporting that the U.S. may proceed on a deal with Saudi Arabia and Israel would be left out in the cold. Likely what happened with the peace agreement with the Houthis. Finally, I wanted to let you know that this weekend, thousands are expected to gather in Jerusalem for the People's Peace Summit. It's a 2-day event that's spearheaded by 3 women, Mika Almog, Maya Severe, and May Pundik, under the auspices of It's Time, a coalition of dozens of peace-building and shared society groups, and their message is the conflict can and must end. Almog, one of the women, began her career as an executive producer and a screenwriter. She serves as It's Time's content director. Pundik is a human rights advocate. She co-leads a group called A Land for All, which is a movement that promotes a shared Israeli-Palestinian future. And Savir is a longtime peace activist and author. She serves as the Search for Common Ground country director for Israel, the world's largest peace-building NGO. These 3 women are committed to not compromising on Gaza. Savir said it will be an opening to the main event, a call for an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages, and a permanent end to this war. The horror and shame that I feel as an Israeli and as a Jew at the actions that Israel is committing on a daily basis, the killing, the destruction, the children, my God, the children, end quote. Maya Severe ended the interview that she did with Haaretz with a line from a Palestinian poet, Mahmoud Darwish, which is a poem called To My Mother. It says, I love my life, for if I died, I would feel shame for my mother's tears. It's really that simple, Severe says. We must teach all Israeli and Palestinian children you have a mother and he has a mother. If something happens to either of you, your mothers will be sad, so you must do everything you can to keep each other alive. May peace come quickly in the name of Christ. Amen.